Absolutely.
Okay, so the first thing that I want to say is you are the first professor that I've ever experienced at Rutgers that mentioned meditation. And I want to know because meditation, it's something I want to be consistent in. It's hard, um, because I do find myself leaning more into a very intuitive, mystical side of psychology, if you want to call it that. So I guess my first question is, uh, when did your journey with meditation start, and how has it changed your life?
It probably started about 55 years ago when I was in graduate school, and there were a group of people who started doing yoga together. I think for a long period of time after that, I was not engaged in any of those activities. I was finishing a PhD, working at Rutgers, just billions of things going on. When meditation would have been a good thing to know how to do. And so I think I didn't pick it up again until maybe 15 years ago. Uh, how did that happen? It might have happened actually with the inception of meditation apps. But there was another factor that led me in that direction, and that was the study of trauma, which you also know from my class. And in the recovery part of trauma and recovery, meditation was a high recommendation. So, as someone who experienced traumatic events in my life, pretty deep and powerful, it seemed like the right way to go. So, I've been doing it ever since. How has it changed my life? Well, there were so many variables of in that in that question. Um, because one of the things you also know is I trained as a psychoanalyst. That was a that was a life-changing event too. And I also think of psychoanalysis as, at least as I experienced it personally, was meditative in the sense that you're on a couch, you're not looking at anybody, and you're just letting your thoughts go. It's almost like the opposite. Instead of not paying attention to all those thoughts, that's all you do is pay attention. So they're interestingly complementary forms. Uh, Another factor in the process of development was a colleague of mine who's actually a Zen master. He he was for a long time the director of the writing program. His name is Kurt Spellmeyer. So he actually, he was on the West Coast. He went to India. He did everything he needed to do to become a Zen master. He actually married I mean, he didn't marry my son in that sense. He married my son and my daughter-in-law because he's authorized to do so. So as a Buddhist guy, and we actually taught a course on Zen and psychoanalysis. It was just another feed into the process. And another feed is a yoga teacher with whom I've done a lot of breath work, which is deeply meditative too. So I don't know if I answered your question or if I just went around in different places.
No, you definitely did. And that brought up something that I was thinking because you're you're a person that has spent years devoting your life to psychology and learning about the human mind. So I was wondering, with meditation, and I assume maybe with that came a sense of spiritual satisfaction for you.
Mm, yeah.
Did that ever clash with your practical Western educated psychological teachings? Was there ever a clash with like Eastern and Western for you?
No, I feel like it was totally complementary. that I could delete things I didn't like about the crap in the West. I still don't like. And, combine, I think the best of both universes of being in touch with yourself in sort of radically different yet complementary ways of just stopping, which I think of meditation as being just drop it all. And just in terms of being a teacher, being a husband, being a father, being a dog father, all those places where you need to stop, fucking lifesaver.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. I need to be consistent with it. When I have meditated, I have noticed considerably. It was not that it like made my life like it enhanced it in a way, but it just made it easier to deal with uncertainty in a way.
Yes.
And that leads into my next question I have because I'm about to graduate college, going
Mm,
into the unknown. And when I think of becoming an adult, I think of fear and anxiety and,
mm,
loneliness. And I'm scared of leaving behind the community I made at Rutgers. And I don't know
mm.
what the future holds. So I guess for you, a person that has had much more experience than I have, how do you deal with the unknown and those situations where you don't know what's going to happen?
Yeah, well, I had such an experience of dealing with something I certainly never planned, never even thought to think of in a way. It was an unthinkable event. So at the time I was young, I got to Rutgers when I was 25 years old. Uh, and although, I look back, I think, oh, you were really, I mean, you think 25, well, I was a professor at Rutgers and blah, blah, blah. But I was just a kid, really, emotionally. Unprepared for the things that you can't prepare for. Ask me the question again, because I feel like I went someplace I not necessarily needed to go.
That's okay. I just how do you deal with the unknown in your life?
Okay. I think, well, it's at present a real thing. So there are things in my life that I know are going someplace that I don't want them to go. And it's also a darkness. I have no idea of how it's going to unfold. It has to do with a person very close to me who has a disease. And it could be ameliorated. Many things could happen, or it could just don't know. So how do I deal with it? I think I just by living in the world as I have been, which is to say, stop, cut the anxiety, cut just all those things are always there, but you don't have to be gripped by them. I feel like between meditation, being with friends, talking to myself, journaling, it's not to say that it's ever easy either, that you're just kind of floating along, but it does help you float along. I mean, it helps you avoid the worst, the deepest, worst, because I think in those, when you're emotionally sunk in that way, it's really hard to get yourself out of it. So I feel
Yeah.
like it keeps me sort of even. And even when I'm really down, I don't have to live there. I can say, well, listen, I feel down. There's good reason to feel down, and it's not going to go on forever. And, self-soothing in various ways. So meditation is one, self-talk is one.
Yeah. I think when you said that it's okay to feel negative emotions, but you can't be gripped by them, I resonate with that a lot because do you know Alan Watts?
Sure.
Yeah, one of the things he said was like thoughts are like passing traffic. You don't have to attach yourself to them. You just have to watch them go by. And that was very interesting to me because I think initially I had a fear where if I detach myself from my thoughts, then what is my identity? My
Yeah.
whole life, my identity has been the things I think.
Thoughts. Yeah.
Like the second I start viewing thoughts as outside of me, it's like, oh, well, I'm lost at sea. you know? But then something else which I've come to terms with is it's that like you have to be friends with the dark in your life.
Yeah,
And
that's
the
right.
unknown, those things, they're scary, but there's also a weird sense of comfort in them. And yeah, I think I've become better at dealing with those situations now than I was before. So,
The wisdom of insecurity.
yeah.
That's one of his texts, isn't
Yeah. I think so. I think so. But yeah. This next question I have, you mentioned that you came to Rutgers at 25. I'm not 25 yet. I'm 22. Just turned. And I want to know, what were you like when you were 22?
it? Hmm, I was a smoker for sure. So at 22, let me see, let me get my bearings. So I probably had just graduated from college. I got married the day we graduated because we were of different religions and we thought her father wouldn't come to the wedding, but we knew he'd come to graduation. So he did show up. He did show up and he brought a bottle of scotch. So, so I was 22. We we left, we were in school in Maine. We left for Maine to go to Cape Cod, where I had a job and she could have a job for the summer before we went out to Midwest to go to grad school. Uh, I was always very horny. I always wanted my wife, and I smoked. I got this job. I was meant to be a first cook for a chef I had worked with in the past, in the summers on Cape Cod. And I got to this place, which was in Barnstable, Massachusetts. It's like the beginning of Cape Cod. It was a very fancy inn. And the first event that was taking place there was a wedding that this state senator had bought the property and his son was getting married. And my friend, the chef, left the country to avoid being drafted into the Vietnam War. So I was left as a 22-year-old, not too bad cook, but I had to prepare a wedding for 50 people. That was really an amazing trip. So, what was I like? I worked my ass off. I was always nervous, I suppose. I had to order food, cook food, hire people. You know, it was really way beyond my capacity, but somehow it all happened. I was, I don't think that if I look back, I don't think that I would be all that fond of that kid that I was at 22. Just too much pressure, you know, newly married, wanting much more than I really could get, working, long hours, headed out to a place I knew nothing about. We were just going to Indiana. I was so naive that I wasn't sure there were lumber stores in Indiana, so I brought enough wood to make a couch. So just, I was probably a little on the arrogant side. Um, I was smart enough, but not emotionally intelligent. That's what I would say.
Well, do you think 22 is the right time to be arrogant in your life? If there was any time where arrogance was needed,
Probably not.
probably not. Yeah,
Probably.
interesting. That's very interesting to hear all that because I think my 22 is very different than your 22 was.
Yeah.
Um, I think the
Yeah.
one thing we share in common is the smoking, though. I do need to quit that. I do need
Yeah.
to wean
I
off.
I quit when my kid was born. I said, I want to live long enough to see this kid grow up.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um,
So you're very different because you don't have the same pathway. You're not sure exactly where you want to go, what you want to do. I did have an idea about that, even though I didn't know actually how it would turn out. Uh, I I did, was going to grad school. You're going into the void. Wow. What
yeah.
did you major in?
Well, I'm majoring in political science and then I'm minoring in English and DCIM. That's why I took literature and psychology.
Right, yeah,
Yeah, I have I have somewhat of an idea. Probably gonna go to law school sometime in the future. Between then and now, I'm probably gonna be working for a bit so I can save up money.
yeah.
Um, in terms of the actual job, I'm still figuring that out. Um, but yeah, I feel like there's like cycles in my life where like certain like stereotypes happen again. Before I entered college, I entered this phase where I was so uncertain and things weren't working out, and then all of a sudden I stuck the landing. And not to like I'm not clairvoyant, but it feels as if I'm following that same cycle right now. I think there's like certain things in life that keep coming up, and there's certain stories or tropes that in different areas of your life, it's like you keep getting the same result in a way. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass, but that's something I've noticed.
Yeah.
But my next question is, what advice would you give to someone that is 22?
Okay. I have a phone call I need to take.
No
Can you
worries. No
hang
worries.
on? Hello? Thanks. Sorry for the interruption.
No worries. No worries at all. My mom actually interrupted me a few minutes ago, so I had to mute and show her my hand. But the question that I asked was what advice would you give to someone that is 22?
I think I probably wouldn't stick my nose into advice, but until I knew a little more about it. So I think I'd want to know something about what you're passionate about,
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
or
Me
what
personally?
concerns you, or where's your heart as well as your spirit.
Oof. Well, my heart lies in the arts. I make music for my bedroom and I'm in a band as well. And
Mhm.
that's something that I've been doing for a few years now. So that's definitely where my heart is. And I think for me, I've always sort of thought that a job is just a means to pay for my hobbies, you know? Like the whole point of making money for me, of course, it was to live comfortably and all that, but on a deeper level, it was just so I could have the freedom off the clock to be able to live the life that I wanted.
Yeah.
Another thing that is becoming very important to me is authenticity, and um, I've been toying with the idea of like who am I as a person beyond the influence my friends have had, my family, society, trends I see on social media, you know, who was I before external influences entered my life? And then I had another thought where, but no, you are the product of your environment.
Right.
So which one is the real me? I think that's another thing that I care about a lot. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm. So my advice would be to stay with the things that you love.
yeah,
See what happens. I do want to suggest that the work one does to make the money to do the blah blah blah, that's also that can't be a thorn in your side. That also has to be something that you care about. I feel incredibly lucky to be able to be a teacher, for example, because I feel like whatever I do in whatever small way, I feel like, yes, I'm part of that big context of socializers, and I feel like I push in a certain direction that most people don't, and it feels really important. So even though, at when I graduated or before I graduated high school, I bought myself a beautiful Martin guitar,
mm,
and I wanted to be Bob Dylan. So I'm sympathetic with the music and the love of the passion. But I think you also have to find something that you also care about because you don't want to spend 8, 10 hours a day at a job that you hate or that you feel repulsed by, or it's really important to care about it because that it's like, your whole your life wants to be you want to integrate things in your life and not totally separate this from that if
yeah.
it's possible.
That is true. That is true. I think I also think I do have the self-awareness to know that if I'm doing a job that I hate or if I'm in a situation I find uncomfortable, sometimes I think my fight or flight just goes off and I'm like, I have to leave right now.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't even have an alternative, but I need to get out of
Get
that
out.
situation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Both of my kids are musician types. My
No.
daughter went to the New England Conservatory of Music. My son went to Oberlin, studied voice, but neither of them are doing this exclusively. It's just impossible.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But
Interesting.
it was a good thing to do. I mean, they were passionate, they were good, but boy, is it tough to make, to sustain life in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to get really lucky, I think.
Yeah, lucky is one part of it for damn sure.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that oh, 1 second.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
You mentioned that after you graduated, you got a Martin guitar. Um,
Yeah.
I I have my acoustic right here actually, and then
Uh-huh.
yeah, I have a Strat and a Telecaster back in my room.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
that was just an aside. You mentioned that you wanted to be Bob Dylan, and then you ended up now working for Rutgers, being a professor, and having experience being a working in psychology. So I guess I want to know. You probably already answered it, but maybe you could answer it deeper. Have you ever changed your mind on important things, changed your path, made last minute decisions? Have you ever changed what you thought you were going to be doing?
Actually, I feel like I've been pretty steady state in both of the directions that I've taken. When I was an undergrad, I believe that I actually wanted to become a psychologist, but the classes in psychology involving rat labs were so repulsive to me. I just thought it's corrupt. So I stayed with remaining interested in psychoanalysis, which I also got introduced to in, maybe my first or second year in college. And so when it came to going to grad school, I went in English, but I stayed on my track too. And so I wrote a psychological biography for a dissertation. And then after I was at Rutgers for maybe about 10 years, I started training to be an analyst. So I feel like I, my motive for being an English major wasn't the best of motives. My brother was an English major. So my older brother, who actually he went to college before me. He was like 4 years older, and he would leave some of his books around that, from first year classes. They were they were actually Alan Watts. They were the introductory lectures of Freud. So I feel like I was lucky in that way. I found a path through my brother. Did I know what it would involve being an English major? No idea in the world.
Mm, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't drastically changed your path, I guess my next question is, do you think it's wrong to change, especially after doing something for a long time? Like, I, I think a lot of people, especially after doing something for decades, they kind of are fit into the box of assuming they can't change their path.
Hmm.
What do you think about that? Do you think it's wrong to change, or do you feel like it's better to stay doing what you were doing?
Those seem like the same question. I feel like no, I would definitely. I mean, I was here for a decade. I decided to go in another direction, and I'm totally happy that I did that. No, I think changing is, as long as it's kind of rational and not some kind of impulsive. I'll give you a story of a change that didn't work. My own brother, same brother, he went to Harvard Law School, became a lawyer, went up in North Massachusetts, got a nice job, rose in the firm, became the head of the firm. And then at a certain age, he must have been in his 40s, maybe even his 50s, totally comfortable life. Oh my God, sailboat, Mercedes. He decides he wants to become a fisherman. What happened was he took his boat to Bermuda, ended up, the boat got whacked in a hurricane while they were there. They stayed with these people, and the man and my brother concocted this idea to become, fishermen. Well, they bought a boat, they retrofitted it, they went down to South Carolina to start this enterprise. It lasted a month before the partners broke apart. My brother injured himself. I mean, he wasn't a kid schlepping giant buckets of ice, crashed, and he has never recovered
Wow.
because it was really a stupid move. So I think change is fine, but let's be let's be a little rational about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That is true. That is
And
true.
I think that meditation is one of those places that can stop you from doing stupid things.
Yeah.
Just stop and think about it.
What do you think is like the difference between those stupid off the cuff decisions versus feeling intuition and feeling something deep in your gut where you need to do something even if you've been doing something differently for like the past year? How do you feel like you can make that distinction?
Yeah, it's probably only in retrospect that you can,
Yeah.
say, "Oh yeah, this worked out," or it didn't. But I don't know. I feel like it probably depends a little bit on your social circumstances and who you talk to and how have you processed this decision. I guess that's what I would say. With whom and how.
Yeah. Interesting. Because I find it's very hard to figure that out. Also, if I need to make
Hmm.
tough decisions, some people say flip a coin, like one side is one thing,
Right.
and then like when it lands, you will know which one you want based on your reaction to what side the coin is.
Yeah.
But even then, I don't know. I can't tell if it's intuition or if it's just me overthinking or I don't know. I still have to maybe I should meditate actually. Maybe I need it a lot. Um, my next question, we've been asking all these like very abstract, vague questions, and we're going to continue with that theme. I want to know regret. Have you dealt with it? And how do you deal with it? Because for me, I'm leaving college with some regret. Little things like, maybe I should have paid more attention in some classes. Maybe I should have used Rutgers resources more. Maybe I should have, enjoyed moments that I didn't know I wasn't going to get back. So,
Mm.
and I feel like since I'm so young, I don't know if I have the proper tools to deal with those situations. I just feel it out, and eventually I stop feeling it. But how do you deal with regret?
Sometimes I beat myself up. Why was I so stupid? I feel like I don't have regrets in the recent past. My regrets go way back. Some of them are just going to hang around with me for life. I made a decision, something terrible happened. I had no hand in it in some ways, but my not doing something as opposed to doing something made a radical change. So radical that it's still part of my psyche. How do I deal with it? Well, I spent a dozen years in psychoanalysis dealing with it. I deal with it in meditation. As with other things and later in life, you just accept that you can both regret it and understand why it happened and be forgiving to oneself and so forth.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there are any like recent regrets. Yeah, I feel like I'm in pretty good shape on the regret front. I mean, like I had this huge regret that might be cleared the decks in a way.
Yeah, I think forgiveness is important. One of the things my professor told me, because I expressed to him that I did have regrets with Rutgers, like maybe I should have paid more attention, should have done this and that. And he said, the fact that you have that self-awareness
Mhm.
is a good thing because a lot of people don't have that.
Right.
So, yeah,
Yes, there's no second thinking. No, it's corrective. We make mistakes.
yeah,
They're important too. It's inevitable. As parents, teachers, human beings, we fuck up all the time.
yeah, that is true. And I think we just have to give ourselves the grace of being able to fuck up, you know?
Yes, that's right.
This goes hand in hand with the regret question. I want to know, and this is something I feel I haven't learned yet, but how do you say goodbye to things? For example, I just was at a conference that was it was a Model UN conference
Hmm.
year. I've been staffing it since 2022, and this was my last one, and I was so full of emotion because of the people I've grown up with, the friends I've made, and I think I have tried to convince myself that it's not the last time, even though it is, because if I just accept it for what it is, I'm gonna just crumble and I'm gonna be filled with sadness. And so I don't know actually how to effectively say goodbye to stuff. So, in your experience, how do you say goodbye to things?
Some things that are ending, in some ways you never say goodbye to. It's a kind of regret of a different sort.
Yeah.
Um, I think I just end up feeling my feelings. That is, you feel sad about it. That seems like exactly the right. How else should you feel? It's it hurts. It's sad. It's a transition, and it's not like you're moving from one thing to the next where you have a kind of known and a sort of unknown, but a comfortable unknown. You're moving into an unknown period. So the transition is wrenching at times.
Yeah, no, and I've definitely gone through that ringer, but it's funny on the other side of it, after I think I've felt the capacity of sadness that I had, I was just thinking like, all right, what's next? Like what's the
Yeah,
next thing on my plate?
exactly.
Yeah,
It's
and
because you will become connected because you're a person who connects. It's pretty clear from, I don't know you deeply, but I do know Model UN. My kid was in it and the same sort of thing. It went on for years through high school and college and it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. And then it's
it's
over.
It definitely is. Leaving it was sad, but I think it's a weird thing where after you allow yourself to feel what you need to feel and you can look back at it retrospectively, it doesn't feel like it's over. It's just it's still a part of your life, but
That's right.
the physical part of it is gone, but it's not like it's I think it's over when you forget about it. As long as it's in your head, it's eternal, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
I like that perspective.
Well, thank you.
Memory is memory is really important. And in the Jewish faith, when people die, one of the ways that offers a condolence is to say, may their memory be a blessing.
Yeah.
You're always holding something. This, this, and I think the lessons that you learn inside of that indeed will be in truly alive. You know, the context is gone, but the things you went through, grew up with, and so forth, carry forward.
That is true. That is true. Um, I have three questions left.
Okay.
I'm gonna make this quick. First question is because this class for the capstone, the documentary that I'm making has to be related to digital media in a way, which kind of
Okay.
makes the first 90% of this interview. I don't know if it really applies, but I do want to know, how do you think an emerging adult can find himself in an increasingly digital world where it seems like your identity is just all over the place?
Yeah. It's an excellent question to which I don't have a clue in a sense because I didn't have, I wasn't subjected to that kind of pressure.
Yeah,
It- there's a way in which I feel like I could be naive and still be safe as a kid.
yeah,
Uh, the 1960s, 70s, it's so radically different now. It's hard for me to imagine. I'm very grateful for all of the apparatuses. I mean, this, couldn't happen otherwise. Uh, but I can't, in some ways, I can't imagine what you guys are going through. My child, my youngest son is going to be 40, so he grew up with this, but not to the same, it's just not as intense.
it's
It's bewildering.
it's mind-boggling because one other thing is I do want to get your opinion on this because when you grew up, the only way you were able to find out information about the outside world is through newspapers or seeing it on the news. Right now, like on my fingertips, I have access to I can just
Everything.
like I can see a video of a cute cat and then immediately a second later I can see there's like a bombing happening with people
Right.
dying and I guess
Yeah.
I want to know like psychologically, do you feel like that's going to have an effect on people to
Oh,
get that overload of information all the time?
yes, yes, totally. And I think it even has to do with some of your regrets about being in school and not paying attention, because I think that is exactly what's been captured is our attention.
Yeah.
I, even I mean, I, my students can't read as many books anymore, literally. And it's not because they're unable to read the books. It's because there's so much crap. There's so much, even here we are, having a conversation for 40 minutes or so. I've been interrupted twice. You've been interrupted twice. And I think when we're alone doing, reading our book, oh, you got to text, you got to turn, oh, while you're doing your text, oh, you might as well check your email. It's like fucking endless. And it's just one rabbit hole after another. You have to be so self-aware to step outside of that to go back to your focus. I
Yeah.
think focus has been murdered.
Focus definitely has.
And you suffered COVID too.
Oh my God. What COVID did to our generation was mind-boggling. There was
Exactly.
definitely a pre-COVID and a post-COVID.
Totally true.
Yeah. I think something which is maybe a lost art that's scary is just the ability to just sit and be bored, you know? Kids these days won't know that. Like I see when me and my
Right.
family go
Right.
out for to a diner and we order. In that 30-minute window when we're waiting, we go on our phones because like when you were a kid, for example, not to like make judgments, but I assume when you didn't have anything to do, you would just have to sit with yourself.
Exactly.
And that's not so, even I feel like if I have to do that, I'm gonna start like scratching my neck after a while, you know?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So,
There's a really wonderfully famous essay in a book called On Kissing, Tickling, and Being Bored.
yeah.
Its point was exactly this, that being bored is not a bad thing.
Uh,
It can energize you to do.
yeah. Like sometimes getting bored and then you kind of like start dozing off and then your brain starts slowing down and then ideas start coming, especially for creatives. That's like such a
Mm,
nice time, you know? I think it's
yeah.
like theta brainwave or something. I don't know. I don't want to start talking like I know these things, but all
Let me
right.
tell you one thing about a class that I'm teaching. Well, it's actually psych and lit, same class. I got to a point in the semester I realized that the next book we were going to read wasn't going to get read by many people. It just was clear to me from any number of things. So I said, okay, it's midterms. Everybody is out of their minds already. I'm just going to say, we're not reading anything for this week. You come to class and we will read a short story together. So we did that. And I asked the kids, how was your experience? Because everybody sat and read the story and then we talked about it. I said it was kind of amazing because they weren't interrupted by anything. They could just read for 20 minutes or so, and it was a new experience. Oh my God. It's terrible, but I think that was absolutely true, that there's so many distractions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if it's any consolation, in Lit and Psych when I was there, I do remember someone did a poll in the group me for the class that was like, it
Ah,
was kind of tongue in cheek. It's like, how many of you are actually reading the texts? And surprisingly, about I think 75% of people clicked, yes, I read the text fully. So maybe
yeah,
maybe things are on the upside. I don't know.
yeah,
My hope is that enough people get so self-aware that they realize the damaging effects of lack of focus that they
yeah,
go the
yeah,
opposite.
yeah.
But two final questions. This next one is a pretty fun one, and it's this. Let's assume you were stranded on a desert island and you could
Okay.
only take one album with you. What album would that be?
The Well-Tempered Clavier by J.S. Bach.
Really? Why is that?
I think Bach is just a genius of all times. And I have listened to that music since I was an undergrad. I listen to it regularly, sometimes when I read, sometimes when I grade papers. I just find it magnificent. I don't know, even though it's just a keyboard, there's not a giant, there are lots of musics that I like, but this is like totally precious to me.
Yeah.
That
Uh,
is a fun question. And I'm glad that I just had an answer.
yeah. I I think I have predictions for all the professors that I might interview for this question. In a weird way, I thought you were gonna say something like Rubber Soul or like the freewheeling Bob Dylan or something.
It's funny.
Yeah. So my final question
I
is,
find Bach is meditative
yeah,
and deep and beautiful. I mean, it has all the qualities that I value.
and it's surprising as well. Like when you listen to the first
Yes.
16 bars, if you've never heard of that song before, you're gonna be like, I didn't think it was gonna go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bach is amazing. Um, my final question, and thank you for your patience in doing this, is I know you said that you don't want to dip your nose in giving advice. However, I do have to ask if there is any one piece of advice you could ever give anybody, maybe the last thing you want to tell people before the world ends, what would
Hmm.
it be?
Uh, well, before the world ends, I want to get laid one more time. I have to say that because I think as spiritual as anything else.
Oh my God, it is. It is. Anything where you can be entirely in the moment
Yeah, yeah, there
is a
you go.
spiritual moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And doing that with another person means that you're in the moment together, and there's something really rather wonderful about that.
Yeah.
Prior to the end of the world, well, I don't know, I could probably think of some other things to do. But the way you framed it made me think that. I mean, and it's not like, I mean, that is a thought that I've had, about the end of the world. Like, what would I do if the Russians were blah, blah, blah? But, well, go out with a bang.
Yeah. Well, I guess we don't have to look at end of the world, but let's just one piece of advice that if there's one thing you would tell people, just any advice,
Sure.
or a word or a quote, what would it be?
To be conscious, to be conscious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Do you
that's
think do you think the majority of people are unconscious?
most of us are most of the time because it's convenient.
Yeah.
You go through the routines and you're used to them and they work. So I think being conscious is one place where you could say, we need to make some adjustments here,
Yeah.
or I need to make some adjustments.
When I think of being unconscious, I think of living life in my head.
Yeah,
And, I'm either thinking about the past or the future. And I notice what that does for me is every day sort of becomes the same because I'm living in a predictable future where I know exactly how the
right,
next day is going to go and the next.
right.
Man, when I'm just tuned into the present moment and all that matters is what I'm doing now, it's weird. It's like time slows down. You look at it's like I'm high or something. Like I look at my phone one time, it's 11:46. Put it down, I feel like an hour has passed. Look at it again, it's 11:50. And I'm like, that's weird, but it's just because I'm in the moment. I'm here
Moments.
now, you know?
Yeah,
Awareness, yeah.
yeah,
So I would agree with you. I think being conscious is important. Um, that's pretty much it for me. Thank you so much for doing this, Professor.
absolutely. It was a pleasure speaking with you and seeing you again.
Yeah, thank you. Here, let me stop the recording real quick.